Good evening, everyone. My name's Jenelle Riley. I'm so thrilled to welcome you to this screening with this very special movie, 1985. Thank you. I didn't have anything to do with it, but I agree with your applause. At this time, please join me in welcoming two of the film's stars. I want to start with an actress who plays Eileen. She is, of course, an Academy Award nominee and a SAG Award winner, whose work includes everything from Candyman to Sideways to Designated Survivor, just to name a few. Please welcome Virginia Madsen. Also joining us as an actor has shown his range in everything from the stage to Fantastic Four to The Shield. He is a Golden Globe and Emmy Award winner and a SAG nominee. Please welcome Michael Chiklis.
There you are. Hello.
Thank you. Your nephew's here? Should we embarrass him? He said he was coming. Oh.
And niece as well. And
he had to look like
Represent.
I'm right here on to him.
Michael, where's your family?
They didn't come. To be fair, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. We're leaving to go to New York tomorrow, so my wife's packing. So,
and she's probably seen the movie.
Yes.
Okay.
and she has way better clothes than me, so I'm just gonna throw shit in a bag and she's gonna look amazing.
She's a fashion monger. Yeah, it's a big thing. She's going to New York, so.
So this is an audience of SAG actors. Yeah, so I always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card? What was that first job? I know you have one.
I know you have one.
You have a SAG award, so you better have a SAG card.
Right, yeah.
I think mine was I was in a commercial for Bob Evans restaurants.
Wait, the Bob Evans?
Yeah, it used to be a chain, and I had been I had been an extra, and this director liked me, and so it was an audition, the same thing, and I had to walk towards the camera while pouring coffee in my little Bob Evans uniform. And I had to say, "Come to Bob Evans now, and we'll give you free refills on coffee." And that was my head thing.
Well done.
And so I had a whole character design, because I was waiting tables. Yeah. So it was and I got Taft-Hartley, and then I had to pay for my membership.
Yeah.
What about for you?
I was literally tossed into the frying pan. We were just discussing this. I was Taft-Hartley'd in 1988 when I was cast as in the role of John Belushi in the film Wired, the ill-fated Wired. Thank you for the you saw it. You were the only one. Okay, very good.
Actually, that's Bob Woodward.
Oh, really? No kidding. Hey, Bob. Fear, pretty unbelievable. Anyway, yeah. That was terrifying and different. And usually it's stories like that. It's an Under 5, a Bob's Big Boy ad, something. And me, it was I always say this when I talk to students about acting, that as many actors as I've worked with and known my whole life, we have crossover, but no two actors have the same trajectory. Mm-hmm. Everybody's story is different. Everybody got in differently, had their break in a different way, and I just love the varying stories, because we all have things in common. We have crossover, but no two are alike.
So you had literally never been on camera before, not even a commercial or anything?
No, that was
just
it.
the lead role in a movie, playing an icon.
Here's the lead playing an icon. Go ahead.
Wow.
Yeah,
go ahead, do your best.
Exactly. Yeah, and then find out 2 months into it, you're done. You're never working again. So yeah, that was my debut.
Wow, that's
Amazing.
amazing.
Awesome. First question by the international press at the Cannes Film Festival. Do you think you'll ever work again?
Wow.
True story.
I really think you should write a book about this, because it was like The Road to Ruin.
I spent all this time trying to forget
it. Was your first role. But it was his first job, you know?
That's amazing.
I'm still standing. Yeah, that's what the title should be. Anyway.
Wow, that's fantastic. And that's interesting because that was 3 years after this movie is set, I guess. 1988 it was?
Yes, it was.
Wow. So I'm so curious about this movie because I didn't know what to expect. I went into a blind, and it is so beautiful and special. How did it come to you, and were you told up front this is going to be black and white, you know, shot on film, and did you know what you were in for?
So for my part, I was working with Cory Michael Smith at the time on Gotham. I was in New York City with him, and although we never worked together on that show, but we got to know each other, and I liked him instantly, and just really admired his talent, and thought he was really, really special player. And he calls me and he says, "Chiklis, I want you to play my dad." And I go, well, A, that's really super flattering, and B, what's the catch? You know, like I'm thinking, you know, he's got to be an asshole. You know, and so look at me, you know. In any case, when he started, I got nervous when he started telling me about what the film was about, because I thought, you know, I did get worried that it would be a two-dimensional character, that it would be, you know, sort of this overworked set of cliches that, you know, the conservative who's, you know, hateful and not, you know, not supportive at all. And I, you know, I was worried about that. And then I read the script, and, you know, there's love. There's love in it, you know. And that complexity made me go, oh, all right. And I cried several times. And here's the other thing. I moved to New York City in the spring of 1985, right after having graduated from Boston University School of Fine Arts. So I was in the theater community in New York in 1985. And it was, you know, it was a very Dickensian time, because it was the best of times and the worst of times. It was exciting, and New York, and, you know, and theater and all of that, but there was this fucking plague that was happening, and it was scary, and we were losing friends, and it was awful. So, and then he said, oh yeah, and it's going to be shot in black and white, and I was like, I have to talk to the director. And and I spoke to Yan, and he when he explained why, I thought, yeah, that's absolutely spot on, and I get it, and yeah. And the reason he gave me, I don't know about you, but he basically said, you know, the 80s were all about fabulousness and color and sound, and it was over the top and glitter and glamorous, right? And I want this to be stark and in you know, stark contrast to that, and black and white is the way to go. And his explanation was much more eloquent, and but I completely understood, and that was it. I was like, yeah, I'm in.
I just thought maybe they didn't have the money, but I really did. But I love black and white, and it's so beautiful for this movie. I figured it must be, because this director, I don't know if this is his feature directorial debut. I know he made a short film. Yeah.
And that's the other thing that made it scary initially for me, is, you know, whenever you look at a first timer, you're like, you know, but he's so thoughtful, and he had such a great sense of humor, you know, subtle. That's the other thing about it. It's a very subtle, nuanced script, and it's directed as such, and that interests me. You know, so often I get cast in, you know, head banging, and, you know, it's just nice to play a person in a film about people, and I really love that. Yeah.
And for you? How did the project?
Which part for me?
How did the project find its way to you?
It was the same thing. I mean, it was just, you know, a read, and I knew that you guys were both attached, so it was already, something that you'd be excited about being involved with. And I must admit that the idea that it was 16 millimeter, Super 16, and in black and white, like that I love black and white. I love that kind of imagery. Those are the first movies that I ever saw, and I think that there's a romantic quality, there's an artistic quality, there's a bleak quality, and especially with Super 16, there's sort of a grain that's going to be in there when it's on a big screen. And, you see a lot of times filmmakers are trying to sort of create that grain, or they get a little too excited about that. Oh, look at the grain. And it's self-indulgent. And this one, I was like, after talking to Yen, it was the same thing, like, no, this is going to be really cool. And I also have to say that Kodak was donating, because we were dealing with film remnants. So sometimes on the mag, we'd have 2 minutes. Sometimes we'd have 6 minutes. Yeah. And they'd be like, how much is in there? Because we just had all these ends of film rolls.
Yeah. We only had 2 passes at that scene in the backyard.
You're kidding.
That's all the film they had. And there's something
a 9-page
wonderful.
Scene. Yeah. That's
there's
where
something
the theater
wonderful
training comes out.
You feel like, oh, this is how we started. This is and they had to make sure that everything looked right and was right. So sometimes you're like, oh, why aren't they going in close on every emotional moment? It's like, well, we didn't have enough film. And, but it was very much by intention. Like, there was so much thought and planning that went into what they were doing because they had to. So there wasn't any room for indulgence.
Can I pick up something from what you just said? It's a common line throughout my life and my career. I don't know if this is true with you, but in situations where necessity is the mother of invention, it often ends up being the best result. The same thing with The Shield. We had no money and no time, but we had great material and great people in it, and great directors, and people who were, executives who were willing to say, you have this much time, you have this much money, go and make the show you want to make. And that autonomy and that, necessity, to do with what you have. And not, sometimes some of the most lavish productions, there's just so much indulgence, and and I spent a whole day working on 1/8 of a page, and we didn't even finish it, and you're like, what are we doing? I just think that when you have young, hungry people working on a film the way these guys were working on a film and having to count each foot of film, it just made them very, very focused.
At the same time, did you ever run out during a scene? That's got to be... Did you decide to talk really fast?
I remember, not for the whole day.
Yeah.
Right.
But they would run out, and then they'd have to get another one, but it was, everyone was really patient. We were very patient, and because we felt that the material was good enough that it was worth it. And so, yes, it's wonderful to have more money in your budget, but if it's there on the page, it has to be there on the page. And if it's good, then it's worth it. I mean, they had a U-Haul that had the equipment in it, and no, it wasn't comfortable to not have anywhere to go. I mean, there was no dressing room. We all shared a bathroom, and I really was not happy about that. It was like a little kid's room, and if I was changing, someone might walk in, and I didn't like any of that at all. I'd rather be really well taken care of. But there was something that was, because then it was me and Michael and Cory just like hanging out all day in this childhood bedroom. and you telling us great stories about the whole journey of the Belushi movie and things that I never knew about you. So we all became very close, and so it was kind of actor camp.
Yeah.
And that outweighs a lot when you're working on tiny budgets. So it's sometimes those are much more creative. The experience is more creative. It's about filmmaking, and it's about acting, and the storytelling comes first. And it's just not that way when you're working on a bigger monster.
I was actually curious because you guys have such a believable relationship in this movie. You really feel like a couple that's been together a long time. Did you know each other before this, or was it maybe it came from sharing that room?
And you can't buy chemistry, you know.
No, you can't.
Yeah, no, we just
Can't make that up.
right. We just instantly had an affinity for each other, and I think it shows.
And I think the time that we had to spend together was really helpful because we had a comfort level.
In the living room, you know.
Yeah.
There was nowhere else to go, so we had to be each other's company, right?
Yeah, so it was great because we had to ease with each other during scenes, and I think you could really feel that. And it was, and then the little boy plays my young son.
That's great.
And he, oh God, he's so beautiful. And we had all this, you know, old technology. Like there was a phone on the wall, and he was like,
He didn't know what it was. He did not know what it was.
you know, there was a dial, and then there was a Sony Walkman that is in the movie. And when and so he opens up the package because it was brand new, and the clock was still running.
Yeah.
I was like, how is this thing still working? And he's like, why is it numbers? That's like, oh, so he was.
There was a clock on a Walkman?
Yeah, there was a little
the timer.
There was a little digital readout
Really?
on
People
the first
had fancier
Walkman.
Walkmans than I did.
It's obviously still working, unlike my latest phone. But it was an important ingredient in our performances that we had this much time to spend together. For me, I mean, everybody has their own process, but to take yourself and be separate and not be like a company or a family, in my case, it's detrimental to the performance. I think it's vitally important for everyone to become close, to spend time.
Preach. Yeah, right?
It just works better, man. And I know I'm allowed to say that now because I've been doing it since I was a kid. And I just know that it works better. And I know that the actors that are, I'm getting a little actory, but
Oh, well, this is the place to do it, yeah.
But it's some common sense from your mother.
Fucking SAG. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's SAG, so I can say that on this one. But
Sorry.
you know, but it's when I've noticed that actors separate themselves from the rest of the cast or have some sort of thing they're doing, you know, which is, first of all, save that for the camera, please. But when they're off in their own and everyone's tiptoeing around them like, oh, Jesus, they're in their moment, it's detrimental to the set. And it's detrimental to your fellow castmates and to the crew. So, you know, yes, sometimes you need to go off and have your moment in the corner, but when it becomes a whole thing, it's just like it really is. It's detrimental, and it's not useful, and it doesn't work on camera. So, you know, and I saw that when I was a very young girl starting out on the first movies that I worked on, because I was watching the character actors. And I was like, wow, they just do that. You know, they're standing around, you know, drinking a cup of coffee, you know, and then all of a sudden action, and they'll just like bring it with a ferocity and a realism and a beauty that I was like, I want to be that guy, but oh man, I have to wait till, you know, I'm in my 50s. Now I'm in my 50s. I'm still trying to learn how to do that. But what I'm saying is to be a company, to be supportive, and to be closer to your fellow performers, I think benefits the film.
Of course, yeah.
I couldn't. Oh yeah, right. You know, could not agree with that more wholeheartedly.
Oh, there's going to be some people are really mad at me for saying that.
No, that's,
They'll be in a corner somewhere.
They won't be able to sleep tonight. Do you know what Virginia Madsen said to me?
You know, we were speaking earlier about how I think it might be hard for some people to fathom, you know, who were born after this movie is set or right around then, just how bad things were in the 80s, and that AIDS was a death sentence. There wasn't really much hope of recovery. What was it sort of like to take yourself back to that time? And in a way, did this feel like a period piece, or are there parts of it that feel more timely than ever? Period piece.
right.
We've been around for that long, so.
Well, you know, it's an interesting question. I, you know, again, I moved to Manhattan, you know, right out of college, 2 days after I graduated in the spring of '85, and you know. My first production that I ever did when I was like 13 or 14 years old at a place called Merrimack Repertory Theater in Lowell, Massachusetts. You know, we did a production of Romeo and Juliet there. I was a kid. That's how I got my equity card, my other card. And there was the gentleman playing the County Paris. Was a guy named John Ganser, and we became friends. And John ended up being I believe the third man in America to pass away from HIV. It was years later. And when we found out that he was sick, we were told that it was some sort of strange blood cancer. Mm-hmm. So they didn't even know, and I believe that was early. That was like '83, I'm going to say. I can't remember exactly. Don't quote me. But and I was hearing this peripherally through other friends, you know, because he was in New York at the time and I was in Boston. But what was terrifying initially, especially, is that, you know, the unknown. We didn't know. No one knew what we were dealing with, let alone how it was transmitted or whatever. So it was just this incredibly fearful time. And here you are, you know. You talk about trust and connection, and as actors, when we go to, especially when you go to theater school, everything is about trust exercises and connecting with each other and all of this. And all of a sudden now, there's this sort of specter, and it just I'm terribly inarticulate about it because it's a hard thing to put into words. Mm-hmm. It just. And I think that intellectually people from this generation understand it, but it's hard to viscerally understand it unless you were there. You know what I mean? I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just that because I guess nowhere, because that's the way you felt. Yeah. You felt a sort of a helplessness and an emptiness and a like what do we do? You know, how do we handle this? You know.
He has a line where he says he's been to 6 funerals in a year, and I very much remember and you know, people talking about like every month it was another, yeah. Yeah, and just didn't know. We didn't know anything, and there was a silence because you talked about it, you know, in hushed tones, right. Like so and so sick, and you know, he's got it, and then it was gay cancer, right. And then there were people who died, and there, you know, the first person that I knew, we were so young, but in our communities, in an artistic community, everyone was, although hushed tones, you know, it was this thing that we talked about.
I was 21 in 1985.
And
You
so
know.
it was kind of, his parents said that he had a rare form of leukemia. And then it just kept going on, and there was sort of, well, can you get it from,
People were speculating
Yeah.
about toilet seats. It was just,
everything.
it became absurd.
You can't hug somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, then we can't live on Earth.
Yeah,
we
right.
can't like
This is-
hug each other.
yeah.
That's bullshit. Otherwise, we'd all have it.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh, you have to be really careful, because your makeup artist is sick, and it was really.
Yeah, there was some ugliness there.
There was a lot of ugliness that, as it started to become more identifiable, there were children being pushed out of school. There was
Ryan White.
with Ryan
Yeah.
White, and which Ryan White ended up really truly being an angel because he educated the world. He and his mother, but just nobody knew, and just more and more people kept dying and dying, getting sick, and so I think that there was a period of time when it seemed like there was the cocktail, like, oh, that's gonna, now it's like diabetes. No, it's not, and it's still not. But there was this, again, there was a hush that began where once it seemed like people weren't dying in such numbers, there was so much grief that people stopped talking about it. And people had, I lost way more friends than I had, but people just stopped talking about it. And we lost a generation of young men and women, but then it became like everything's fine now. There's a treatment. And so there's young people that don't really know. That's why this movie is really important, because they don't know that it was a death sentence. They didn't know really because we just stopped talking about it,
Well, yeah, right. I think, I've talked about this ad nauseum recently, but it's just this observation of mine that, we're born, we live, and we die, right? We have a lot, and it's that nagging understanding of that condition that makes us afraid. It just sort of inherently this knowledge that we are going to pass. So what happens is we are drawn to institutions, things like religion or anything that's going to create some sense of normalcy, safety, something that's going to make us feel okay, right? And then, so I'm feeling pretty good about things. I'm feeling well. I'm feeling healthy. Everything's fine. And then you come over and you believe something totally different than I do, and you disrupt my safety net. You take my blankie. You know what I mean? And you scare me. So now I get fight or flight syndrome, and I'm afraid of you, so I'm going to fight you or I'm going to run from you. And this is the sort of thing that we're stuck in as a race, the human race. We're afraid of each other, or we're angry with each other because of this, and it sets us all in imbalance. And you have to look at a movie like this. I found it incredibly intriguing that this is a story about a man who wants to go home and tell his parents that he's gay and that he has AIDS, and that's not what happens.
Yeah.
That's what made me want to do the movie, because that's true.
That's true now.
That's true now. Like people
whether
they
you're
set
sick or
out with
not.
an intent, and then life goes, and it's complicated. And I just thought it was subtle and nuanced and just lovely.
I was so, I was loving the movie up until then, so even if he had that conversation. But the fact that it didn't contain that scene, and the scene with you and Cory in the car where you basically let him know, is such a true moment.
Yeah, that was that's also why I loved the script, is because there are especially young people, but people of all ages that would like to come home for Christmas and tell their family about their identity, who they are. That's very simple, and they can't. And so that, to me, is a very current part of this story.
Very much so. I do want to take some questions from the audience, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. In fact, this is it Jeliza? Oh my gosh, what a cool name! Wants to know what was your favorite?
Jeliza.
I know, isn't that cool?
I like that.
Wants
like a
to know
mix.
what was your favorite moment while filming, if any. I assume you had one.
Having to share a bath. No.
Hanging out with her. Honestly, it was. And your dude.
Oh, her dude is here.
Nick, yeah, we laughed.
Yeah, you gave us a lot of laughs.
We did laugh a lot. We did, and I think sometimes the heavier the project that you're working on, the more you laugh because it's a coping mechanism. You know what I mean?
You can't cry all day.
You can't, right? So you walk away from you just go blah, right? Am I right? So we bonded through laughter too and food.
Well, yeah, because they did have a lot of really great food donated. Because
the
craft service
donated.
Everything was donated, and it was craft service was like in the garage, along with the wardrobe was set in the garage, and so there were these local restaurants because the director and the cinematographer are from Dallas, and they grew up together, and so everyone was, so happy for
rent
them.
a barn and put on a show. That's what that was the spirit of this thing.
So we got really great food.
Yeah, you know what? This is the Independent Spirit Awards. I mean, this was an independent spirit. Indie. It just was. It had that. Well,
because you have to be down for that. You have to know going in that this is no frills. This is going to be, this is going to be what it is.
Let's go.
Yeah, we're going to do this because of the content. And so it was, that was definitely my favorite part too, is hanging out with these guys.
How many days did you have to shoot?
It was very
short.
Very short.
It's a couple of weeks.
I don't know.
Wow.
I didn't keep track. It was,
Yeah, this was a very small.
hard enough to get sleep.
And the thing is, again, you do movies for different reasons. And I've done we've both done behemoths that took 6 months to shoot. The same 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? 6 months, 2 hour movie. 14 days, 2 hour movie. It's crazy. But again, look, obviously, if you're doing the Fantastic Four, there's, no.
Yes.
Sorry, but I really like him in
that's
that.
just
Me
it. Look, that was just about the nature of it, the size of it, and that that it's this monster huge thing, and you're spending days and days on a page, whereas this is, hey, let's go, 1,200 hours. We should have taken this hill by now. Where you're a mobile army unit, and you're trying to get it done. And at the same time connect with each other and bring humanity to it. And I like all of you, I love being an actor, and actors love other actors. And it's just wonderful when you get in a room with some talented people and you got some really good material and you get to mix it up.
Because you did mention Fantastic Four, I just want to tell you that you have one of my all-time favorite lines ever in the movie, and that, do you know what it is?
It's clobbering time.
It's actually before you become the Thing, where you're making fun of Chris Evans and you say, he crashed a simulator. A simulator. And I've always wanted to see you do more comedy since then.
Cool.
Yeah.
That might be in the cards coming
We have a question. It's actually for Virginia, but I think it applies to both of you, from Kathy. Wants to know, has the process changed for you? You've had longevity, and what is different about now than when you started out?
I'm a little more tired at the end of the day. No, I think the process has changed because I've tried to simplify, to emulate the actors that I've learned so much from and the actors that I've never met that I really admire. And I think the longer you do it, I don't remember, but it's about being able to access different parts of your emotions, and that becomes a little bit easier. And I don't like the word easier, but it's like you have a vest with a lot of zippers in it, and you can then just say, oh, today we're going to do grief, and right now I'm going to do joy, and right now, you learn to access your emotions without having to give blood. And I did that as a very young actor, and when I would see it on screen, I'd be like, oh, that's what you did for that? 30 seconds of footage? But things aren't very good when you're a younger actor, and you forgive yourself. And so you learn how to get there quicker, and it so that it doesn't take as much out of you, so you're more prepared the next day. Does that and also not overacting. I did a lot of that as a younger performer, because I would put on the character.
Sit in the corner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. and I would be her like all day long, and I'd get migraines.
Methadone actor.
Oh God. And so I think you realize how to simplify, to not be as, because that's a little self-indulgent, but that's also how I learned. That's part of learning and, gaining experience, and then learning from the character actors and the directors you work with, or those directors who know what they're doing. And so it becomes more efficient, so that you can get to the point, and your scenes become more real because they're simpler. And if you think about the actors that you really, really admire, the ones that are really, really good, they almost appear to be doing nothing. But just in a gesture, Meryl Streep can go, and you'll,
She's brilliant. Give her an Oscar.
She'll do that thing.
They
that she
keep
does.
doing that.
She'll do that thing, but there's actors that you admire them so much, and you're like, how did they do that? I don't know. It's a mystery. But part of it is the efficiency and the simplicity, the beautiful simplicity of their work. You'll see painters, some of the great masters, who, as they got older, they're like Turner, for instance. His paintings there was a simplicity to this great work. And so we get to do it longer than dancers, hopefully. So I think the simplicity is that's what I'm trying to learn now.
Well,
do you have anything to add to that,
Well,
Michael?
accessing the emotional pool is but
That was very actory what I just said. I know.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to add grateful to it, because the older you get, I think the more grateful you are. You see people, you see careers come and go, you see people get sick, you see all kinds of different things, and I'm acutely aware of the whole Wired of it all, because I was on a set this March. And I realized, oh my God, I'm on a set right now shooting a show, and it's 30 years later. The Wired was shot in 1988, in the spring of '88, and it was the spring of 2018, and I'm like, could that even be possible? I mean, you know, it's upsetting too, but I'm but you know, but it's a lot. It's like all kinds of things. So you know, I think first and foremost is, you know, I even have it on this little thing. Grateful, you know, it's a good place to come from.
We have a question from, is it Miracle, Mike Hennessy? Is that right? Oh, okay. Wants to say, as a 29-year AIDS survivor, I was very excited to see this film. Who in your life has inspired you while working on this film? Say the last part. Oh, sorry. I know. Buried the lead a little there. I hope you liked it. I loved it. Okay.
And I'm really happy that you're open about it.
See, that's everything.
Status.
That's like a cop telling me they love The Shield. I mean, you know, someone who's lived it, and God bless, and I'm so glad.
Wow, thank you. I mean, thank you for being open.
Yeah, wow.
That helps everybody.
Now, what was the end of his question?
Oh, who in your life has inspired you while working on this film?
I'll tell you who's inspired me tonight. He's you.
Yeah. I mean, this must be the kind of movie where people do tell you personal stories, and it's one of the many beautiful things about it. Yeah.
I'm just trying, you know, there's so many things, so many discussions, so many things that are said. The question is, who specifically
inspired you while making this
while
movie?
we were making the
or
movie?
just inspired you overall?
Well, John, I go back to my friend John, and you know, and again that time in New York, being in the theater community in Manhattan in 1985. Also, you know, I have my two daughters. I have these two beautiful kids, and they're not kids anymore. I mean, they're 25 and 20, and you know, they, again, intellectually they know about what happened, but they don't know about what happened. Mm-hmm. And they have not seen this yet, and I'm really looking forward to it. You know, I'm looking forward to the discussion afterwards. You know.
Well, I do want to let people know that the movie will be in theaters. You guys are going to New York for the premiere. Please do spread the word. Let everyone know. I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys for being a great audience.
Thank you. Wow, it's a full house. You gotta love it.